She looked at me with a softness I'll never forget, and whispered, "I love how you look at me that way." From that moment, nothing between us felt the same. I never thought much about my friend's mother before. She was always just there. A kind presence in the background, the one who welcomed us in with a smile, who always had a plate of food on the table, who reminded us to be careful when we left late at night. But that afternoon, something felt different. The moment I stepped into the house, I noticed her in a way I hadn't before. She was in the kitchen, sunlight spilling across the counter where she stood. Her hair, loose and unhurried, caught the light, and for some reason, I found myself pausing in the doorway longer than I should have. She turned at the sound of my footsteps, her eyes finding mine with that effortless warmth she always carried. "You're early," she said, her voice calm, steady. But then she laughed softly, a laugh that seemed to roll through the room like music, and something in me stirred. I told her my friend would be down in a minute, but she just smiled and nodded. "Then I suppose it's just us for a while." The words were simple, harmless even, but the way she said them, I felt them settle in me like a secret. I sat at the kitchen table, watching as she moved gracefully from counter to stove. She wasn't trying to be elegant, it was just natural. The way she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the way her hand lingered on the edge of a mug before pouring coffee, the way she hummed under her breath, absent-minded but soothing. I caught myself staring more than once. And each time, I told myself to look away, to focus on something else, anything else. But then she'd glance over, almost as if she felt the weight of my eyes, and she'd smile. Not politely. Not distantly. But softly, like she understood something I hadn't even said. And in that smile, I felt my chest tighten. There was nothing dramatic about the moment. No sudden touch, no heavy silence. Just an ordinary kitchen, the smell of coffee and fresh bread in the air, and the way she looked at me, or maybe the way I looked at her. My friend came down eventually, loud and restless as always, pulling the attention back to himself. And just like that, the spell of the moment broke. But I carried it with me. The sound of her laugh, the quiet steadiness in her eyes, the way time seemed to slow down when it was just the two of us standing in that sunlight-filled kitchen. And though I didn't realize it then, that was the beginning. The moment something shifted between us. The moment I began to see her, not just as my friend's mother, but as a woman who held a gravity I couldn't pull away from. It's funny how the smallest moments can carry the most weight. The next few times I visited, I began noticing how often my friend's mom and I seemed to end up in the same room together. Sometimes it was only for a few minutes, waiting for my friend to get ready, or while he ran upstairs to grab something he'd forgotten. But those minutes always felt different. She never treated me like a boy tagging along, never brushed me off with polite smiles the way adults often do. Instead, she asked questions that felt genuine. "How's work going? Are you still thinking about grad school?" Simple things, yet the way she asked, steady eye contact, voice calm and warm, made me want to answer with more honesty than I usually gave anyone. I remember one evening in particular. My friend had disappeared upstairs, searching endlessly for his car keys, and I was left alone at the table with her. She placed a steaming mug of tea in front of me without asking, as though she already knew I needed it. "Chamomile," she said with a small smile. "You look like you carry too much tension in your shoulders." Her words caught me off guard. No one had ever said that to me before. She sat across from me, her posture relaxed, but her gaze was so attentive it almost felt like a spotlight. I wrapped my hands around the mug, grateful for the warmth seeping into my palms. "Maybe I do," I admitted quietly. "I guess I'm always overthinking things." Her lips curved gently, but not in mockery. More like she understood. "That's not a bad thing," she murmured. "It means you care. People who don't care, they don't overthink." Her words landed deeper than she probably realized. Or maybe she did realize. That was the thing about her. Every word, every glance felt deliberate, as though she saw through more than I meant to reveal. As I lifted the cup to take a sip, her hand brushed against mine. Just a passing touch as she reached for a napkin, but the effect was anything but casual. My skin tingled where her fingers had been, a fleeting spark that lingered long after the contact ended. She didn't pull away quickly or apologize. Instead, she let the moment breathe, her eyes flickering up to meet mine, steady and calm. It was nothing. And it was everything. By the time my friend clattered back into the room, car keys jingling triumphantly in his hand, the moment had already folded back into silence. She rose smoothly, busying herself with dishes, and I tried to will my heartbeat into a calmer rhythm. But something in me had shifted. It was in the way she listened without rushing me. The way she seemed to notice the things others overlooked. The way her presence didn't just fill the room, it made the air heavier, more meaningful. And I realized then that every small conversation, every fleeting touch, every shared smile was building into something I didn't have words for yet, but I could feel it. Stronger each time. It happened on one of those evenings where nothing was planned, and yet it felt like something was meant to unfold. My friend had asked me to come over, but as usual, he disappeared upstairs the moment I arrived, talking loudly on the phone, pacing back and forth, completely absorbed in his own world. That left me downstairs. With her. The living room was dimly lit, only a soft glow spilling from a lamp near the couch. The television was on, though neither of us seemed to be paying much attention. Some drama played quietly, filling the silence with background voices that neither of us really heard. She sat at one end of the couch, a blanket folded neatly across her lap. I settled on the other side, trying to keep my focus on the flickering screen. But it was impossible not to notice her, the way her legs crossed so effortlessly, the faint floral scent of her perfume that drifted every time she shifted, the subtle rhythm of her breathing in the quiet. At first, I told myself to stay composed, to keep a respectable distance. But the couch wasn't that large, and over time, the space between us seemed to shrink naturally. Maybe it was when she leaned forward to adjust the volume, her shoulder brushing mine for the briefest second. Or maybe it was when she laughed softly at something on the screen and let her head tilt slightly toward me, as if she'd forgotten I was even there. Whatever it was, I began to feel the pull of her presence more strongly than ever. "You're awfully quiet tonight," she said suddenly, her voice low but not unkind. I glanced at her, caught off guard. "Just tired, I guess." Her eyes lingered on me for a moment, studying me in that way of hers that always felt like more than just a glance. Then she gave a small nod, almost like she understood something I hadn't said. "Sometimes tired isn't about sleep," she murmured. The words struck deeper than I expected. I turned back to the TV, though I couldn't have repeated a single line from the show. I was too aware of her. Of the closeness. Of the quiet between us that didn't feel empty at all. Minutes passed like that, the kind of minutes that stretch and fold into themselves, heavy with meaning. My heart beat harder in my chest, though nothing was happening. Nothing visible, anyway. At one point, she adjusted the blanket on her lap, and without thinking, she spread a corner of it across my legs too. It was such a small, simple gesture, but the effect was immediate. Warmth pooled around us, as though the blanket had drawn an invisible circle, closing us off from the rest of the world. Neither of us spoke after that. We didn't need to. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was full, like it carried all the words we weren't saying. And sitting there, side by side in the glow of the lamplight, with the faint sound of the television filling the background, I realized something I hadn't admitted to myself until that moment. I didn't just enjoy being around her. I needed it. It was late when the conversation finally turned. My friend had gone out. He'd left in a rush, saying he'd be back soon, though both of us knew soon could mean hours. That left the house quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the faint tick of the clock on the wall. She was tidying up after dinner, stacking plates into the sink. I offered to help, but she shook her head gently, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. "You've already done enough just by keeping me company," she said. There was something in the way she spoke, not casual, not careless. I could feel it. I leaned against the counter, watching her carefully. "You say that like it means more than you want me to know." She paused, her hand resting on the edge of the sink. For a moment I thought she might laugh it off, but instead, she sighed quietly and turned toward me. Her eyes softened, shadows of something deeper flickering there. "You're very observant," she said, almost smiling. But the smile faded quickly. "Most people don't notice when I'm tired. Or when I need someone to talk to." The admission caught me by surprise. She was always so composed, so effortlessly graceful, that I never imagined there could be loneliness hidden beneath it. I stepped closer, careful not to crowd her. "You can talk to me," I said simply. For a while, she didn't answer. She just looked at me, really looked, as though weighing whether she could trust me with the parts of herself she didn't show the world. And then, slowly, she spoke. She told me about the long hours she worked, the responsibilities she carried without complaint. She spoke about how people often saw her as strong, reliable, unshakable, but how rare it was for anyone to ask how she was doing. And underneath it all, there was a quiet confession of loneliness. Not desperation, not sadness exactly, but an emptiness she'd learned to live with. Her voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed the weight of what she was sharing. And the more she spoke, the more I felt my chest tighten, not with pity, but with an ache to be the one who eased that weight. When her words slowed, I found myself reaching across the counter. My hand rested gently over hers, warm against the cool skin of her knuckles. She didn't pull away. Instead, she exhaled slowly, almost in relief. "I haven't said any of this out loud in years," she whispered. Her hand shifted, her fingers curling lightly against mine. The touch was small, but it was steady, a quiet anchor between us. "I'm glad you did," I murmured. "I'm glad you trusted me." For a long moment, we just stood there, her hand in mine, the kitchen light casting a golden glow across the room. No rush, no need to fill the silence. Just two people sharing a truth that had been waiting too long to be spoken. And in that moment, I knew something had changed. She wasn't just my friend's mother anymore. She was a woman who had let me see her, truly see her, and she hadn't turned away. It's strange how silence can feel louder than words. That night, after everything she'd shared, we didn't talk much. We sat together at the kitchen table, the clock ticking steadily in the background, the faint hum of the house wrapping around us like a soft blanket. I should have looked away. I should have shifted in my chair, created some kind of distance to break the spell forming between us. But I didn't. I couldn't. Instead, I let my eyes linger on her. Not in a way that demanded anything, but in quiet admiration. The gentle lines that framed her eyes, the kind that only came from years of laughter and life. The way she absent-mindedly traced the rim of her cup with her fingertip, lost in thought. The warmth that seemed to radiate from her, filling every space she touched. And somewhere in the middle of all that silence, she noticed. Her movements slowed. Her hands stilled on the cup, her eyes drifting upward until they found mine. For a heartbeat, I thought she might look away. But she didn't. She held my gaze, steady, unflinching, as though she'd been aware of it all along. A faint smile curved across her lips, not playful, not teasing, something softer. Something real. She tilted her head just slightly, studying me with a kind of patience that made my chest tighten. And then she spoke, her voice low, almost fragile. "I love how you look at me that way." The words fell into the space between us like a spark into dry grass, quiet, but instantly alive. My breath caught. I wasn't sure if I'd heard her right, but the way her eyes lingered on mine left no doubt. She meant it. "I'm sorry," I said quickly, though my voice betrayed me. "I didn't mean to." But she shook her head, silencing me before I could stumble further. "Don't apologize," she whispered. "Please. It's been so long since anyone has looked at me like I was more than just a mother, more than just someone holding everything together." Her words cracked something open in me. I wanted to tell her that she was so much more, that every moment I spent near her felt like discovering something I didn't even know I was missing. But all I could do was sit there, my pulse racing, my hand aching to reach for hers again. She leaned back slightly, exhaling as though a weight had been lifted. You remind me that I'm still seen. The honesty in her voice nearly unraveled me. I swallowed hard, trying to steady myself. You are, I said softly. More than you realize. And in that moment, with nothing but the quiet kitchen around us and her confession still echoing in the air, I felt the world tilt. Nothing would ever be the same between us again. After her confession, the room seemed to shift. It wasn't the kind of change you could see, but I felt it, in the air, in the space between us, in the way my chest rose and fell a little faster than before. She had said it so simply. I love how you look at me that way. And though her tone was quiet, almost cautious, the meaning was undeniable. It hung there, fragile but unshakable, like a candle flame that refused to go out. For a moment neither of us spoke. The kitchen light above us hummed faintly, casting a soft glow across her face. I could see the gentleness in her eyes, but also the hesitation, like she wasn't sure how far she could let herself go. I wanted to reach for her, but I didn't want to rush. Instead, I placed my hand flat on the table, close enough that she could choose. She noticed. Her gaze dropped briefly to my hand, then back to my face. Slowly, almost cautiously, her fingers slid across the table until they touched mine. The contact was light, but it felt like everything. Her fingertips rested against my skin, and I turned my palm up so her hand could fit into mine. The warmth of her touch seeped into me, steadying me in a way I hadn't expected. You make it so easy to forget myself, she whispered, her thumb brushing across the back of my hand. I shook my head. No, you're not forgetting yourself. You're just letting yourself be. And you deserve that. Her lips curved into a faint smile, but her eyes shimmered with something deeper, gratitude, maybe, or the relief of being understood. She rose from her chair slowly, her hand still in mine, and walked to my side of the table. Standing so close, she rested her other hand gently on my shoulder. The weight of it was light, but I felt it everywhere. I looked up at her, caught in the soft glow of her presence, unable to look away. She reached out with her free hand, brushing a stray lock of hair back from my forehead. Her fingers lingered just a second longer than they needed to, tracing lightly along my temple before falling away. My heart pounded so hard I was sure she could hear it. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I simply leaned into the moment, into her nearness, into the quiet warmth that seemed to radiate from her. She lowered herself onto the chair beside me, close enough that our knees touched under the table. The contact was subtle, but it sent a rush through me all the same. Neither of us moved away. We sat like that for a long while, not needing to fill the silence. Her hand stayed in mine, her shoulder brushing lightly against mine, our breaths rising and falling in quiet rhythm. There was no rush, no urgency. Just closeness. Just the fragile sweetness of two people daring to exist in the same unspoken truth. And in that stillness, I realized something. Sometimes the loudest declarations aren't spoken at all. They're found in the way a hand lingers, the way two bodies lean toward each other, the way silence feels less like emptiness and more like home. The house had grown quiet by the time the evening settled in around us. My friend still hadn't returned, and neither of us seemed to mind. The world beyond those walls could wait. In that moment, the silence between us felt more alive than any conversation could. We sat together at the edge of the couch, shoulders brushing, hands still entwined as though letting go would mean losing something too precious to risk. The glow of the lamp pulled softly around us, turning the room into a cocoon, as if the rest of the world had gently faded away. She shifted slightly, turning toward me. For a second, I thought she might speak, but instead, she simply studied my face. Her eyes traced me with quiet attention, not in search of answers, but as though memorizing the simple fact of me sitting there beside her. You have no idea how much this means, she said finally, her voice low, threaded with something fragile. I squeezed her hand gently. Then tell me, I whispered. She gave a small laugh, not a playful one, but the kind that slips out when someone is touched too deeply to hide it. It means, I don't feel invisible anymore. And I didn't realize how much I needed that. Her honesty hit me like a tide, and before I could second-guess myself, I slipped my arm carefully around her shoulders. She didn't resist. Instead, she leaned into me, her head resting lightly against my chest. The moment her cheek touched me, everything stilled. I could feel the warmth of her skin through my shirt, the gentle rhythm of her breathing syncing with mine, the faint scent of her perfume mingling with the air. I lowered my chin slightly, my lips brushing against her hair in the softest, most natural motion I'd ever made. For a while, neither of us moved. The clock ticked. The TV hummed in the background. And there we were, wrapped in the simplest form of closeness, the kind that didn't need words or explanations. I let my hand rest gently along her arm, my thumb tracing small circles against her sleeve. She sighed softly, a sound that was less exhaustion and more relief, as though the weight she carried had finally eased. "You make me feel safe," she murmured against my chest. The words settled in me with a quiet power. I tightened my hold just slightly, enough to let her know I meant it when I whispered back, "That's all I ever want to be for you." We stayed like that, wrapped in silence that no longer felt heavy but full of understanding, of unspoken promises, of something tender and rare. Eventually, she tilted her head to look up at me, her eyes searching mine. There was no rush, no urgency, just the soft certainty that whatever this was, it mattered. And as I looked back at her, I knew, whatever happened beyond that night, this moment was ours. It wasn't about stolen glances anymore. It wasn't about what was forbidden or complicated. It was about finding comfort, warmth, and belonging in each other, even when neither of us had been looking for it. In the stillness of that room, with her hand resting against my heart, I realized something simple and undeniable. I hadn't just found her. I had found a home in her presence,